Hearing will come to order. The subcommittee meets today to receive testimony on an update to the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter program and integrating fifth-generation tactical fighter capabilities into the service's fighter fleets. I want to welcome our witnesses for today's panel. We have Vice Admiral Matt Winter, the Director of the F-35 Joint Program Office, Lieutenant General Stephen Rudder, Deputy Commandant of Aviation for the United States Marine Corps, Rear Admiral Scott Conn, Director of Air Warfare for the United States Navy, and Lieutenant General Jerry Harris, Deputy Chief of Staff of the Air Force for Plans, Programs, and Requirements. Gentlemen, thank you for being here and thank you for your service. This year marks the beginning of an important transition for the F-35 program. After 17 years of development and engineering activities, the F-35 will complete its baseline development program by May of this year, and then enter into an operational test period this September to assess and validate if each variant of the F-35 provides the capabilities needed to meet operational requirements defined by each of the military services before us today. F-35 acquisition is still increasing, but still not to the level the services require. Last year, the Department of Defense requested 70 F-35s. This year, the request is for 77, with plans for the service's budget for 99 aircraft per year by 2023. Procurement costs for F-35s are steadily declining. Last year, negotiated costs for the 3 F-35 variants were over 6% lower than the previous year. Hopefully, projections for actual costs continue the recent trend of coming in below the program office's estimates. Last year marked several notable accomplishments for the F-35 program. Among them, all developmental weapon testings were completed. The final version of the Block 3F software was provided to some of the fleet, and 66 F-35s were delivered to the U.S. services. Additionally, F-35 deliveries were made to Italy, Norway, Israel, Australia, and Japan. But the F-35 program continues to face challenges ahead. In addition to beginning operational testing this year, also marks a transition from initial development activities to follow-on development, which has become known as Continuous Capacity Development and Delivery, or C2D2. While the goal of C2D2 methodology is designed to deliver continuous modernization to the warfighter in smaller increments and an expedited timeline, the recent Director of Operational Tests and Evaluations report to Congress questioned whether or not the C2D2 program is properly resourced and whether the testing community will be provided sufficient test aircraft built in a current production configuration to perform and validate future capabilities. In terms of oversight, the subcommittee has always had affordability at the forefront of its F-35 oversight activities. To supplement our F-35 oversight activities, the subcommittee included a provision in the fiscal year 2017 National Defense Authorization Act that required the Government Accountability Office, or GAO, to review the F-35 sustainment support structure and provide Congress its findings and subsequent recommendations to address affordability issues. We look forward to those. The GAO's report released in September of last year noted that the F-35 program is facing key sustainment challenges that include repair capacity at depots, spare parts shortages compounded by insufficient reliability of various parts and components, unfunded intermediate-level maintenance capabilities, and delays in development of the computer and network-based automatic logistics information system known as ALICE. We look forward to GAO's continued review of those issues. To address these issues, we understand that the F-35 program in the past year has executed $114 million of fast track in standing up depots, made investments in reliability and maintainability improvement projects, and obligated $1.4 billion to increase spare parts purchases, and also built up repair capacity and improved the speed of repairs. The F-35 Program Office has also developed a 5-year technical roadmap for ALICE to address future requirements. ALICE in its current state is not user-friendly and has caused the service's maintenance personnel to create burdensome manual tracking processes and inefficient workloads. We've not only received testimony about that, I know a lot of our members have traveled to sites and spoken to them, the personnel directly, and they continue to relate to us the difficulty with ALICE. More troubling, each service continues to rely heavily upon contractor-provide information technology experts to manipulate ALICE's intricate software and complex databases because the ALICE system still does not meet contractual capability requirements that would enable our personnel within each service to independently operate and input data into ALICE. As much attention and effort that was being paid to getting F-35 development and procurement costs to a reasonable level, the same level of effort and attention now needs to apply to Alice and its functionality. Despite these efforts, the three services operating the F-35 still share a critical concern about rising F-35 operations and support costs affecting affordability. We understand the F-35 program needs to reduce F-35 operations and support costs by about 1/3 to meet service budget goals for affordability. Otherwise, in-state quantity goals for each service could be dramatically impacted. The higher than desired operations and support costs, compounded with the parts and depot issues I mentioned earlier, are already beginning to manifest with the service's hesitation to increase procurement rates beyond current levels until the F-35's glide path to affordability trends in the desired directions. But increasing production is also how we lower production costs. For the Tactical Air and Land Forces Subcommittee, our actions will be to continue close oversight of the F-35 program and to continue to provide the Department the tools and resources necessary to realize F-35 affordability. The capabilities the F-35 brings to the battlefield against advanced threats are desperately needed to make the goals and objectives of our new defense strategy and that of our foreign partners invested in the program a reality. We, with our foreign partners, absolutely cannot risk the F-35 program meeting a similar fate of the F-22 program, where we're not able to procure and field sufficient capacity to meet combat commander warfighter requirements. Gentlemen, I look forward to your testimony on how we can meet these and other future challenges in the F-35 program, and I will now turn to my colleague, Nikki Songas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon. I'd like to thank our witnesses for being here today to discuss the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter. The F-35 program has come a long way in the 10 years I have served on this committee, and important capabilities are finally being delivered to Air Force, Marine Corps, and Navy. And while the program has had dramatic cost growth and schedule delays since its inception in 2001, over the past 5 years, its cost and schedule have been relatively stable. When I look at the F-35 program, I see 4 major aspects to the program, each with its own achievements and challenges. First, in the area of production and delivery of aircraft, the program is generally meeting delivery timelines and cost reduction goals. For each of the last 4 lots of aircraft, final negotiated costs have been lower than what was projected in the budget request for those years. Given the scale and complexity of the program, this is a significant achievement. A second aspect of the program is completion of its 17-year system development and demonstration phase, which is expected to occur in a few months. While completion of this almost 2-decade-long effort is certainly welcome, according to the Joint Program Office, more than 200 software and other deficiencies will not be fixed by the time this phase officially ends. In addition, critical supporting infrastructure, including activities that produce vital threat information, logistics support software, and simulators for the F-35 remain immature and behind schedule. It's important to note that the government already paid for these deficient and lagging capabilities once, and that the contractors failed to deliver. It's now important that the government be compensated for these shortfalls in the future. A third aspect of the program is a cost to operate and maintain the F-35, often referred to as sustainment. Now that large numbers of aircraft are actually entering service, all 3 military services operating the F-35 are expressing great concern about the cost to operate the aircraft. In public statements and discussions with the committee, senior DoD officials have expressed these same concerns. The F-35 was designed to be, quote, affordable stealth, unquote. So I look forward to hearing about how we get there. A fourth element of the program is a tremendous amount of work and cost ahead in the area of follow-on development, previously called Block 4, and recently renamed Continuous Capability Development and Delivery, or C2D2. This follow-on effort to improve the capability of the F-35, mostly through software upgrades, is needed to keep up with the latest threats. However, the cost of this effort has been exceedingly difficult for Congress to nail down over the past several years. Through the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2017, Congress required the Secretary of Defense, as a precondition for moving forward with this part of the F-35 program, to provide a detailed cost estimate for this effort. Unfortunately, the report provided to Congress this past January in response to this legislation did not provide the required information. And despite clearly not meeting Congress's demands for information, the C2D2 program is moving ahead as we speak. However, we do have some idea of the potential cost of the effort. In subsequent information provided at the request of the committee and the information provided by the Joint Program Office to the committee, it appears the cost between fiscal year 18 and fiscal year 24 to achieve all the requirements for the C2D2 program may be as high as $11 billion in development and $5.4 billion in procurement. This potential cost of $16 billion is an astonishingly high amount, and as far as I am aware, greatly exceeds any cost figures previously provided to Congress. Furthermore, the DoD's position remains that it wants to run this $16 billion development effort, which exceeds the cost of a Ford-class aircraft carrier, outside the normal program of record rules and regulations. It's also important to remember this is a software-intensive effort, and that the last 17 years of F-35 software development have seen dramatic cost increases and significant delays. How this new effort will somehow defy this unfortunate history remains an open question, to put it mildly. If Congress agrees to support this effort at this cost and under the proposed management regime, it should only do so fully aware of the significant risks involved. It is possible, of course, that the effort will proceed without any problems. It is also possible that a few years from now, we will be told of massive cost overruns and dramatically reduced capabilities planned for delivery. While I support improving the F-35 in the future to provide the best capabilities possible, I would like to explore in detail how the DoD is proposing to manage the significant risks involved in this effort. I look forward to hearing from our witnesses today, and I yield back.
Thank you. Without objection, each of the witnesses' provided statements will be included in the hearing record. And in addition, I ask unanimous consent that non-subcommittee members be allowed to participate in today's briefing after all subcommittee members have had an opportunity to ask questions. Without objection, non-subcommittee members will be recognized at the appropriate time for 5 minutes. Gentlemen, we'll begin with Admiral Winter, and you will be followed by General Rudder, Admiral Conn, and then General Harris. Admiral.
Thank you, Chairman Turner, Ranking Member Tsongas, and distinguished committee members. It's a distinct honor and pleasure to appear before you today with my 3 esteemed colleagues who represent our U.S. warfighters. In addition to our 8 international partners and 3 military sales teammates, these gentlemen are my customers and hold me accountable to deliver an affordable, lethal, and capable 5th-generation F-35. Let me say up front, over this past year, the F-35 program execution has remained on track. We have delivered the Block 3F capability to our warfighters and are preparing to continue that capability development. Our production costs are coming down as our 3 production sites in Italy, in Japan, and in Fort Worth are beginning to ramp up for full rate. We are sustaining over 270 aircraft around the globe as we expand our global network to ensure that we can do that and handle the fleet growth. And our U.S. warfighters are prepared, trained, and ready to fight the fight today with F-35. However, with these overwhelming and marked increases in accomplishments, we have a lot of challenges, and those challenges across development, production, and sustainment lines of effort. I've gone through a number of dialogue and quarterly engagements with the professional staffers and discussing these challenges and opportunities extensively. What I'd like to do today is take a few minutes to highlight some of those directly with you and how our PB19 budget submission provides the critical investments to tackle those challenges, but also help enable some of the opportunities. In development, our combined government and industry team has made significant progress in Block 3F test program, finishing all of our weapons testing, flight sciences, and mission system capabilities, executing over 5,000 test points just this year, resolving a lot of the known deficiencies, and we still have deficiencies remaining that we'll talk about. We are on track to complete, though, the final SDD flight certification and verification of the spec later this month. We've delivered the Block 3F aircraft software last month to the United States Air Force and are preparing to provide to our United States Marine Corps and United States Navy later this month and next month. All of that together brings enhanced sensors and targeting, improved data links, improved threat countermeasures, and enhanced weapons capability throughout the flight envelope. Though we have delivered the Block 3F, we must continue to mature the enabling capabilities. And those enabling capabilities, and specifically the ones I'm talking about, are the ones that we have warfighter operational concerns with. Those are our mission data files, MDFs, and the Autonomic Logistics Information System, ALICE. To that end, we are improving our reprogramming labs and putting actionable initiatives in to ensure that we can deliver MDFs in a more timely fashion. We are stabilizing the current fielded ALICE capability to give our warfighter higher system capability confidence. And we are assessing a new ALICE architecture roadmap to ensure it scales with production and remains viable for the long term. Our PB19 submission captures these and some of our critical near and term requests. We completed all of our hardware qualification this year, which allowed us to lock down the production spec so that we can deliver spec compliant hardware. We also made considerable readiness from last year, on track to start formal initial operational test and evaluation. Additionally, we are supporting hand-in-hand the director of DOT&E in his execution of select pre-IOT&E events that are taking advantage of unique operational weather conditions and availability of military capital assets. For the development of F-35 warfare capability, it can't stop at Block 3F. Rather, Block 3F is our foundational element, which we will go forward for continuous enhancements and improvements, and must be delivered to ensure F-35 retains that battlefield dominance. However, there should be no doubt the currently fielded Block 3 is and can engage and provide the much-needed capabilities to our warfighters to fight the fight and to engage those today's threats. The problem is those today's threats are not stagnant. So we've leveraged the experience of our national intelligence agencies to provide an assessment of those future threats. And from those future threats, our warfighters have defined the next set of requirements. The Department has approved and validated those Block 4 capability requirements to ensure that the F-35 remains relevant. With the Block 4 requirements established and the Block 3 capability baseline understood, it became crystal clear to me that we could not pursue a development progress and plan similar to what we did over the last 2 decades, not in time nor in cost. The threat is simply moving too fast. We saw not only an opportunity, but a mandate to craft a new innovative strategy that leverages commercial agile tenets to modernize, enhance, and improve the F-35. This strategy will develop, integrate, and test release incremental capabilities on a warfighter-defined and technically feasible cadence that accommodates those shifts in threats, but also can take advantage of new technologies that come on and oscillating resource budgets. This new capability delivery, C2D2, continuous capability development and delivery, reflects industry's best practices and will simultaneously support the currently fielded capability as we bring on new capabilities. With this opportunity, though, there's absolutely no doubt in my mind there are many challenges. We are still in the initial stages of this new strategy. One of the reasons why the FOM report did not provide the detailed data that I know we need to bring to you. This new strategy will start to decompose the requirements to a technically feasible work packages so that we can more accurately define the work, lay out an executable, realistic schedule, define the new skill sets that we need within the government and our industrial base, and more accurately estimate the associated costs. I want to thank this committee's proactive engagement in the recently signed FY18 NDAA, directing the Department to pursue more agile acquisition developments like this, and for Block 4, requesting the Congress's support as we bring on those new skill sets and develop those new cost estimating relationships, engineering and test methodologies, and set a course for a true cultural change across the Department. You have my commitment that we will continue to communicate the evolution and the evaluation of this strategy in real time with you, with your staffs, and all the defense committees in my quarterly in-person updates, as well as our annual update of the C2D2 FOM report as required by the FY17 NDAA. From a production perspective, our U.S. services total procurement quantities remain steady at 2,456, with our international partners and FMS teammates coming forward with their procurement of 741 aircraft over the life of the program. Last year, our program achieved the planned delivery of 66 aircraft, but also 74 propulsion systems as planned, including the very first F-35A coming off of the Japan Nagoya FACO production line and the very first F-35B from our production line in Cameri, Italy. In 2018, we have already started delivering Lot 10 aircraft with the Block 3F capability. Our program's delivery goal of 91 aircraft this year combines both U.S. and international partners' aircraft. Our PB-19 requests the funding for 77 U.S. aircraft so that we can maintain the capacity requirements of our U.S. warfighters. I will tell you on price, I'm encouraged but not satisfied with the reductions. 6% is good because we're coming down, but it's not good enough. The $94.5 million settlement price for an F-35A in Lot 10 was good, and we're delivering aircraft now under $100 million, but we need to get better. We need to further drive out the cost of production. To that end, we have set aggressive cost glide paths, and we have new incentives with industry to truly lean out their production processes, increase their quality, hold them accountable, and effectively ramp production from the 66 of last year to 160 in 4 years, all while ensuring fair and equitable profit, but not excessive profit, so that we can make this continued cost reduction fit our services budgets. I appreciate the subcommittee's critical support for providing the department with the ability to use economic order quantity funding in FY19 and 20. This approach is absolutely important step in making the F-35 continue cost reductions, but it won't solve the problem wholly. My team remains keenly focused on aggressively reducing the cost to produce this F-35 by leading a multi-agency cost deep dive with our prime contractors and the top 100 suppliers to build a knowledge base that allows the government and the prime contractor to fully understand what it costs and what drives the cost of producing an F-35. Additionally, as production line assessments are conducted across that supplier base, my team will highlight production line efficiencies that, when implemented, will further reduce and have the opportunity to reduce F-35 production costs. We are attempting to achieve and approach a competitive cost at the fourth-generation alternatives. Finally, let me address sustainment. As of last month, the operational F-35 fleet consisted of over 270 fielded aircraft around the world, and we are on track to deliver 670 additional aircraft over the next 5 years. To support this growth, the F-35 Global Support Solution is working full-time to provide cost-effective, safe, and timely maintenance, repair, overhaul, and upkeep capabilities that looks at the airframe, engine, component, warehousing, and distribution. We are expanding our global operational footprint from 13 bases to over 35 land and maritime bases over the next 5 years. With our United States Air Force F-35s today forward deployed at Kadena Air Force Base, our United States Navy F-35s conducting carrier qualifications in support of their upcoming initial operational capability, and our United States Marine Corps conducting the first ever F-35B maritime operations right now on the USS Wasp in the Pacific Operational Region. With all that said, however, I am fully aware that at current estimates, the F-35 sustainment costs are too high, given that planned fleet and our current future service budgets. We are tackling these cost challenges head-on. We have established aggressive sustainment performance and affordability goals to improve performance and reduce overall sustainment costs by 30% across the life cycle. Equally as important, we are actively pursuing actionable initiatives to realize these costs. I look forward to talking about those in the questions and answers, but here's a quick look. Accelerating the stand-up of repair capacity at our organic depots, increasing the required spare parts posture, investing in reliability projects to reduce aircraft subsystem failures, stabilizing and enhancing ALICE to more accurately identify maintenance issues, flowing increased maintenance action authorities down to the flight line to reduce operational turnaround times, completing the modification of older aircrafts, our LRIP 2 through 5 aircrafts, and bringing them up to the more reliable and sustainable Technical Refresh 3 configurations. And in the business, looking at shifting to true performance-based logistics business frameworks that will allow us to capture the true costs and hold industry accountable to deliver quality performance for a reduced cost. Through these initiatives, our calculations show that we should increase availability by 20% on average and shift the sustainment cost ratio as we track to meet our 30% reduction goal. I have my entire sustainment enterprise, as well as our senior Department of Defense leadership, laser focused on these actionable cost reduction efforts to ensure we can meet the cost targets and our U.S. and partner warfighters can own and operate the F-35 well into the future. In conclusion, we are on track for another productive and challenging year. It will be a year of growth and transition, a shift as we go from legacy SDD to C2D2, grow and line our production facilities to meet the coming ramp while driving quality in and costs down, ensuring that we can effectively shift that cost ratio and reinforcing a global supply chain and distribution network to hit our service and partner cost targets. The F-35 is ready to fight the fight today, and your JPO is working daily to ensure F-35 remains affordable, lethal, effective, and a warfighting system in support of your national defense strategy. We will continue to focus on that affordability, accountability, and open, transparent communication, and you have my commitment to do so. Mr. Chairman and distinguished committee members, I thank you again for the opportunity to provide these opening remarks, and I look forward to your questions.
General Rudder.
Chairman Turner, Ranking Member Songus, distinguished members of the House Armed Services Subcommittee of Tactical Air and Land Forces, and other distinguished members that are here. Thank you for the continued support, and I appreciate the opportunity to testify on the Marine Corps F-35B and C program. In line with Secretary Mattis' guidance and CMC priorities, my top priorities for Marine aviation are framed around the National Defense Strategy of the principle of lethality. Central to this are building readiness for combat and modernizing our aircraft. Transitioning Marine aviation's legacy tactical aircraft to a fleet of fifth generation F-35Bs and Cs is critical. They will perform the foundation of the next generation of air combat element by providing us the tools to execute our required mission sets. The F-35 remains our top acquisition program. The Marine Corps program record is 420 F-35s, 353 F-35Bs, and 67 Cs. 2018 marked the first year we are buying over 20 aircraft per year. This ramp is optimal for us and will allow us to train fifth-generation aircrew maintainers while simultaneously supporting global force requirements as we transition out of legacy platforms. From the operator's perspective, the F-35's capability is unmatched. Marine F-35s have participated and continue to participate in exercises like Red Flag, Agile Lightning, and our Weapons Attack Instructor course. The aircraft has proven its worth across all assigned mission sets and achieves mission success not previously achieved by other platforms, certainly our legacy platforms. To date, the Marine Corps has activated 4 F-35B squadrons. VMFA 121 Japan has assumed the 31st MEU, as Admiral Winter just stated, flying on this week, and they have still have 10 back in Iwakuni to assume as a 10-plane squadron to assume those mission sets. This week, they flew 6 aircraft under the USS Wasp to support the 31st MEU. Of note on that, they took 2 brand new pilots with them in Sea State number 3, and they felt comfortable landing that aircraft on a pretty dodgy flight deck, and it landed without incident. That's the extra stability of this particular aircraft. The second F-35 MEU on the USS Essex will deploy this summer. So this fall, we will have 2 F-35B dets on 2 different ships in the Pacific and or other theaters. So my message, I guess, is as we talk about sustainment, we're in it today. Marine Corps will transition its first F-35C squadron, VMFA 314 and FY19. They're currently over in the CENTCOM AOR doing great work for our CENTCOM commander. They will be ready for expeditionary operations in 2021, but their primary mission will be to work up and deploy on the carrier by 2021, right after the first Navy deployment. Ultimately, we'll have 4 F-35C squadrons that will rotate in deployments on the carrier with our naval brothers and sisters through a tactical air integration program. We have an aggressive roadmap, but we expect to complete our transition to the F-35B and C to be out of legacy TAC Air by 2030, and F-18s being the last legacy TAC carrier we'll get out of. Now, our primary concern. The Marine Corps in the partnership need to see a reduction in cost to own and operate the F-35. This is by far our greatest programmatic challenge. We are working with JPO industry to drive down costs. There's a learning curve associated with aviation logistics. As this process becomes more mature, we expect to see a decrease in operations and sustainment costs. The key areas, such as parts reliability, repair turnaround times, are being addressed. Very simply, I think, as you just heard Admiral Winter says, and as we have laid into our FY19 funding, we have laid in standing up our intermediate level maintenance capability, being able to test and check and or repair parts closer to the flight line, accelerating our stand-up of our organic depot repair capability, investing in our spares, fully investing in our spares capacity. And Chairman, your budget and everything that this committee has done and Congress has done to increase our spending limits have allowed us to not only buy airplanes but also fully invest in our spares, so I thank you for that. We're also investing in engineering to improve parts reliability, and quite honestly, what helps with our reliability in this aircraft is upgrading our software, because many of our mission systems are the ones that give us those fault codes that provide downing discrepancies. New software will help us work through that. I will reemphasize that both variants of F-35B and C are critical to the Marine Corps' aviation modernization strategy and our nation's ability to deter and compete. The average age of the Marine Corps TAC aircraft is 22 years old. Our fleet of Harriers and Hornets continue to support deterrence and combat missions forward. Whether they're on the ship, we have them on the carriers, land-based, or various parts of the world, they'll continue to do that, and we'll continue to update them to maintain tactical relevancy. However, even in the most basic form, our F-35 today are already forward deployed and far more capable than any of our legacy tactical platforms. Mr. Chairman, distinguished committee members, we appreciate your continued support of our aviation programs. Look forward to answering your questions.
Admiral Conn.
Chairman Turner, Ranking Member Songas, and distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today and discuss the Navy's F-35C, a fifth-generation aircraft that, when fully integrated into the carrier wing, will make the carrier strike group more lethal. In support of the National Defense Strategy, the procurement and modernization of the F-35C remains a priority to integrate into our carrier air wings. The F-35C will form a backbone of the Navy's air combat superiority fighter for decades to come, complementing the fourth-generation fleet from the carrier air wing. The carrier wing of the future must rely on the capacity and capability of both fourth- and fifth-generation aircraft. The F-35C provides unique capabilities that cannot be matched by modernizing our existing Super Hornets. Low observable technology, modern weaponry, electronic warfare capability, and advanced integrated systems that enable the F-35C to rapidly counter an ever-evolving air-to-air or air-to-surface threat. The F-35C, integrated and interoperable with the carrier air wing and the carrier strike group of the future, will make us again more lethal, more survivable, and more able to accomplish the entire spectrum of missions that could be called upon from our global force. The fiscal year 2019 President's budget maintains the PP-18 procurement profile, which will meet the transition timelines for our aircraft and squadrons to get to the fleet. The Navy is committed to procuring F-35Cs to achieve fifth-generation capability for what it takes to win in a near-peer competitor environment. The Navy recognizes, everyone on this stage or on this dais, the Navy recognizes the operations statement costs associated with a fifth-generation aircraft are going to exceed those of a fourth-generation aircraft. However, we have to drive down the costs to make it more operationally affordable. We are aggressively pursuing efforts among those that are mentioned previously to reduce those costs by over 30% in 10 years. One of those areas where we see potential cost savings is to reduce the amount of contract logistics support. There are many things that are done by contractors that our sailors, once they get informed and trained, can do and should do to drive down costs. We have funded the initial effort to stand up the intermediate level depot that will be first deployed on our carriers and amphibious ready groups and then to our shore installations. The Navy needs the capability of the F-35C on our carrier decks, particularly in light of the geopolitical landscape that we're in and the pacing threat. Affordability initiatives are underway and drive costs closer to the fourth-generation aircraft. Development and modernization efforts for the 5th-gen aircraft are like every other aircraft we own. We're modernizing our Super Hornets, we're modernizing our E-2, we're modernizing our E-18G with next-generation jammer. It is no different, particularly against the pacing threat. Mr. Chairman, distinguished members, thank you for your continued support. I look forward to your questions.
General Harris.
Chairman Turner, Ranking Member Songus, and distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to testify again. Our engagements should continue to increase in both frequency and qualitative content as we continue to benefit from that. As not yet mentioned, some of the questions you may ask may lead to classified answers, to which we'll be happy to respond after the meeting rather than try and talk around a correct answer to make sure that we get the information that you need. The United States Air Force is now operating more than 130 F-35As and will continue to grow the wealth of knowledge and further develop both the aircraft and the tactics, techniques, and procedures for this weapon system. Last year, when we all met on this topic, we were eagerly awaiting the results of getting this system out into the hands of our staff sergeants and our captains. I cherish the moments behind my Pentagon desk when I get to speak with these professional maintainers and aviators about the work that they're doing, and they're all smiles talking to me. As expected, the newer aircraft are with updated software and are flying better, they're flying more, and they're performing extremely well in our deployed and training environments. While we still need further modifications, the combat units employing this weapon system feel like the Block 3F version of the F-35A is the aircraft they were promised. In other words, to them, it rocks. We appreciate the continued support of the Tactical Air and Land Forces Subcommittee, and we look forward to your questions. Thank you.
I think you get the prize for the quickest presentation. Because we have so many members and so many questions that members want to ask, I'm going to keep my questions somewhat short. Admiral Winter, there's much discussion in DOD and in your written testimony about affordability. What defines affordability? I mean, percent reductions in unaffordability does not necessarily mean affordability. So what is our goal? How do we define affordability? And doesn't economics of scale play in the overall equation of trying to reduce costs to reach affordability? And on the aspects of sustainability, one of the goals of designing this aircraft was that it was, in theory, supposed to be designed to be easier to sustain. You were telling us some of the things that the JPO is doing in order to try to address those. Could you please give us some context of why we're not where we had intended and how we're going to get there? And where is there? What is affordability?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for that opportunity to define affordability. Also, the tenets of our program that support our warfighters' ability to fight the fight with F-35. Affordability comes in the context of from a resource capability to able to provide the people, the facilities, and the funding to be able to accomplish the F-35 development, production, and sustainment. What we've seen over the past is certain decisions in the legacy acquisition strategy of 2001, total system performance responsibility, for example, that provided the opportunity for industry to chart the course of F-35, that allowed the technical and programmatic insight that is normal across the United States government acquisition force in the program to not be at the same level and rigor that this acquisition professional would seem to be appropriate. In that, through the 2004 to 2007 timeframe, technical issues such as the weight of the F-35B, such as the LO characteristics of the airframe, and other technical issues drove technical pauses and stops and requirements changes, as well as program restructuring that culminated in the Nunn-McCurdy in the late 2000s. At that time frame, the re-baseline and the step out anew of 2011 established an opportunity to actually design, develop, and deliver the F-35 air system. So from an affordability perspective, there was an inflection point in 2011 to reset that clock. That clock was reset, and since that time, from a development perspective, the program has executed within the mandates and the guidance of the Department and the Congress to design and deliver F-35. The extenuating attributes of F-35 goes in that we capture the entire F-35 air system in our cost estimates, in our technical work to go. So it's not just the aircraft. It truly is the intelligence systems. It's the maintenance systems. It's the training systems. It's the planning systems. All of those elements that in traditional aircraft programs are captured in other budgets and reported through different mechanisms. F-35 and the Joint Program Office reports all of those costs together over the entire life cycle. And with that gives us the opportunity to see what it truly costs to deliver fifth-generation strike fighter capability. In that, the production costs will continue to come down, not just from a quantity perspective, which our industry partners would say, but as importantly, getting a true understanding of what the touch labor and the material costs are so that the U.S. taxpayer and our partners actually pay what they should pay for a F-35. F-35 ALICE system, an F-35 trainer and intelligence system. Those are some of our initiatives in the deep dive and the production line of effort to ensure that we not only negotiate fairly with our industry partners, but we continue to look to the long term all the way to 2044, which is the intended production run of the F-35. From the sustainment perspective, this program office and previous administration had their eyes appropriately focused on F-35 development to get warfighting capability into the hands of our warfighter. We kept the emphasis on production, and we made sure that sustainment was looked at, but we didn't give it the same scrutiny that it needed to be, and we are giving that scrutiny now. And our operation is support, as I say, if you can afford to buy but not own and operate, then you're going to have to either not buy more or you're going to have to reduce the overall execution. And in that case, we have sat down with our service and U.S. services and international partners and the senior leadership, to the very senior leadership of the Department of Defense. And we've charted a sustainment cost ratio and a sustainment engagement strategy that focuses on the true levers, not just to reduce costs, but to understand those costs. Previous engagement with the industrial base as we were growing the production line, we identified a number of unreliable subsystems because of the immaturity of the aircraft and the immaturity of the subsystems. Those immaturities are starting to be matured, and we're bringing on in our newest lot of aircraft in Lot 9, Lot 10, and Lot 11, much higher reliable subsystems. So those aircraft availabilities are much higher. They're in the 65 to 75% range, where our new oldest jets, the LRIP 2 to LRIP 5, are in the 40% availability because of failing subsystems, because we cannot repair those subsystems, and because we don't have new spare parts on the ramp to put those into the aircraft for them to go back and get to operate. So with that definition of the problem set, we have identified actionable efforts on one, to transition and stand up the repair capacity for those over 3,000 items right now, the backlog of 3,000 subsystems that need to be repaired, tire and wheel, thermal management systems, avionics, and things of that nature. We have stood up 23 repair capacity organically within our United States, and we are starting to stand up the next 19 over the next 2 years. Our PB-19 requests the appropriate resources to do that next phase of organic depot stand-up for repair capacity. In standing up that repair capacity, we take the repair demand signal off of the industrial base and allow them to focus on what they're good at, which is actually producing at rate the individual subsystems and spare parts that we need. Those industrial base and the supply chain will then be able to go for spare parts and also new production parts. That will allow us to get to the spare parts posture that's absolutely necessary, coupled with the repair capacity to increase our availability. The other initiatives to actually drive in reliability into those subsystems, we will realize that as we go forward into Lot 10 that we're delivering all the way through our Lot 15 when we bring on our Technical Refresh 3 new hardware and computing capacity that truly gives the government an open architecture, government-owned interface of the inner guts of the F-35 aircraft that will allow us then to drive in our Block 4 cadence of software and hardware modernizations and enhancements and improvements, affordable at our pace, cadence, and best performer, and not beholden to a single individual industry partner. The other elements that allow us to drive down the O&S costs are taking our ALICE system and stabilizing it and bringing it up to the usability and functionality necessary to truly what we call prognostic health management, to be able to predict the maintenance efforts on our aircraft ahead of time. That is still a number of years away, but with the recent release of our Block 3F software in the aircraft and our pending release of ALICE, we'll be able to get ourselves back into a position where we don't take subsystems off of the airframe unless they're actually failed. Those are our primary technical and programmatic efforts to get after the O&S costs as we go forward. Thank you, sir.
Admiral, as you know, when Congress always, our work is prospective. We're working on next year. Right now, we're doing the 2019 fiscal year National Defense Authorization Act. I think everybody gets the sense that the F-35 is turning a corner, which is positive, but I would say that 2019 is the year of the F-35. Everyone is looking to that the issues that are outstanding be solved and that costs come down in a way that's predictable, and that the implementation of what you just described occurring. Going back 2 years backwards, we're doing 2019. In 2017, when we did the National Defense Authorization Act, we put a section in the bill that required the department to provide the Congressional Defense Committees with a report that contains the basic elements of an acquisition baseline for Block 4 modernization. In January of this year, the department provided us a report that provides only initial insight, which of course reduces our overall confidence that the Department of Defense actually knows the answer to the question. In 2019 being the year of the F-35, it's also the year of the F-35 for our oversight. Are you familiar with this request of the basic elements of an acquisition baseline for Block 4 modernization that the committee has requested? And if so, can you tell us when we might be able to receive something besides just initial insight? And if not, could you please take this back and address the issue?
Mr. Chairman, I am familiar and aware of the direction from the NDAA, and I am aware of the pedigree of the report contents that did get delivered to your committee and the Congress. The next elements of the continuous capability and development and delivery framework is being established today. We are late to need in establishing that activity. We have been pushed with the Block 3F, which is the departure point, but we have now got defined requirements from the warfighter. We understand the Block 4 requirements, and those requirements to address the advanced threats in the 4 mission sets that the U.S. services need to use the Block 4 system for. With that, this year and next year, right now, we are devolving those warfighter requirements into technical work baselines. We did not have that information when the report was sent. We had the plan to do that technical work understanding and lay out the technical efforts to a PDR and CDR. We also saw the opportunity with the Block 4 capabilities being 80% software driven to embrace an agile, rapid, iterative process that allows us to target capability enhancements and improvements on a warfighter cadence. If they need the EW system updated, we can do the EW system. Instead of having what you would normally see in a program of record, which is out to all the way to 2024 with every individual capability always going to be delivered at an exact same time. We're embracing that flexibility and opportunity, but we're not being haphazard. The technical underpinnings of this is based upon our technical refresh architecture of the aircraft. the current TR2, half of the Block 4 capabilities technically can operate on that. And then TR3 in 2021, the balance of those capabilities can operate on TR3 or needs to operate on TR3. So before the report was sent, we were able to map those timelines and map those 3-year periods and then provide a cadence delivery. And so we are on our path to provide that technical underpinning, and with that, the cost estimate to do the verification, validation, and understanding of the new agile principles in system engineering and test. We will have our Defense Acquisition Review Board with Ms. Lord in June, and in June, our acquisition strategy we are bringing forward for approval, and at that time, we will have the entire acquisition plan all the way to 2024 laid out for the department's review and approval. We plan to share that as it evolves before June, and I have authority to provide that as that's maturing to the Congress as part of our quarterly updates. And then as we come out of the June DAB, bring the Block 4 plan to you. Right now, from a cost estimate perspective, we are using our traditional cost estimating relationships which are based on the Block 3 and traditional acquisition timelines. We are proposing true agile Scrum, rapid iterative activities to design and develop in code and then have operational and developmental testers review and look at it and then put it into the system. And when I say that, I mean put it into Alice, put it into the aircraft, put it into the simulator, put it into the intelligence system. It's not just the aircraft. That allows us rapid delivery as well as understanding and learning and be able to flex to real-world threats as they become aware by our warfighters. I realize that this is not traditional, and what we need to do is provide you the sense of confidence for the goalposts that we can operate between and bring that to you. Right now, our FY18 and FY19 resources provide those necessary critical near term so that we can bring you that plan as we come forward in this summer. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Songus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Admiral Winter, for being here. I mean, I think we have these questions on C2D2 going forward because it's important if Congress is going to understand the costs and the risks and the timeline to be sure that it's executable, realistic, and in its scheduling and realistic in its goals. We need to understand all that before endorsing it. So in addition to what you just said, it's my understanding that you were unable to provide a definitive estimate in the January report, which was requested, again, because we need to be mindful of what Congress is committing itself to, because the military services have yet to decide how much of that potential $16 billion upgrade, if you include the $11 billion in development, the $5.4 billion in procurement, how much of that they're willing to pay for. Is that correct?
Ma'am, I appreciate the opportunity for those numbers. Right now, the current cost estimate across all the way to 2024, which is 2 years more than a normal fit-up, is $10.8 billion. That's the current cost estimate.
For development?
For development of all 8 elements, the aircraft, the MDFs, Alice, the simulators, the threat databases, the mission planning, and the reprogramming laboratories, to be split between the international partnership and the U.S. services. The international partnership will be right now estimated $3.7 billion of that 10.9. And so the U.S. services will be, their cost share is $7.2 billion over 7 years, which is just over $1 billion a year for modernizing and enhancing the F-35 air system, which is on par for post-development ratios of the complete scope that I just articulated. Thank you, ma'am.
And then I'd like to follow up then with our service representatives to just find out where each of your service stands on the issue of your piece of the C2D2 program, what decisions will need to be made in your service as to the way forward, who will make them and when. And we'll start with you, General Rudder.
Thank you, Congresswoman. I think in some cases when it comes down to the budget, the Commandant will have a fair bit of say about what we spend that on. But as we look at C2D2, the one thing that I find that is important to understand in this committee is that the agility and the requirement for the agility. So we will, the JPO will scope out the program and we will stair-step this up. Some of it in the initial processor that we have now, and then the follow-on processor that will get us to end game. But it's one thing as a service that we're actively looking at is the ability for the agility. Now, the agility of this is to be able to download the capabilities we need on a prioritized method that allows us to upgrade the aircraft to keep pace with the threats. And I think one thing about the C2D2 that sometimes gets clouded, I think, is how rapidly the threat and the pace of technological development that they are progressing at. So there will be some budget decisions that have to be made. If the scope of the work comes in at the level that is proposed and is looking for within our TOA, we are going to be able to handle that. Obviously, O&S costs is another big part of that, which is another discussion item. But we, in the environment that I think all three of us are operating in, we have to be able to download and be agile and download the aircraft with updated capabilities to keep pace where we see the threat going, certainly out into the 2025 timeframe.
So would you say at this point you're comfortable with what the Marine Corps is looking at?
I'm comfortable in the focus on the agile network, the agile way ahead and how Admiral Winter's approaching it. I think none of the service has a true comfort level until we get that sustainment, or no, not sustainment, the cost of how this is going to happen scoped out. We will be, but year by year, we're going to put money into C2D2 at the levels that Admiral Winter is requesting currently.
Admiral Conn.
I agree with Lieutenant General Rudder that we will fund to the requirement. There's obviously, as it works its way up through the POM process, up through this Chief of Naval Operations, Secretary of the Navy, but I think at the funding levels we're talking about, we'll fund to the requirement. Now, whether OSD jumps in and provides us some guidance, I'm not able to answer that at this time.
And General Harris.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for that. Our Chief and Secretary, likewise, will have the final say from an Air Force perspective when it comes to that. But we do want to highlight one of the strengths of this program is that each of our bills are only 40% from an airman's perspective of what that upgrade cost, because it's a joint program that we do share across the services and the allies, so that's helpful. We do have funds laid in our plan to cover most of these costs, and we do intend to execute these upgrades, but we are looking at the agile acquisition methods to reduce both the upgrade costs and also the sustainment portion. So like my teammates, we are not certain of the costs that are coming our direction, that they will be covered as they are. We intend to make sure that we're driving those costs out and working with the JPO and the company to make that happen. I
thank you all for your testimony. It's certainly, no matter, it's a cost, and we just want to be sure that it's rooted in reality and we're not facing, you know, as we have historically with this program, enhanced costs that could have been better thought through. Thank you.
Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank all you witnesses for being here today. One of my biggest concerns is the operational and maintenance and keeping these birds flying. I mean, they're critical. They not only that we own them, but that we keep them flying in the adequate hours to allow people to train and also to operate should we need them. And I'm going to start with you, Lieutenant General Rudder, and go down the line to Admiral Conn and then General Harris. But I want you guys to tell me how many F-35s that you have. If you can, tell me what the average cost to maintain those birds through 2017 was, and then tell me what percentage of the time that they were eligible to be flying that they were flying. I think that's critical. We got to get to the crux of the matter. Does it work when we need it to work, and how much does it cost to maintain? And Lieutenant General Rudder?
We've got about 60 jets right now. Some of them are in operational tests and developmental tests, and then we have 16 operational aircraft forward in Iwakuni and about 12 aircraft that are sitting in Yuma right now. Each one of the aircraft costs, as was alluded to earlier, but just for the lot number aspects of availability, I think we're seeing those lot 6 and below aircraft, which we have the majority of those in our training squadron. We see those below the 50% level. If we begin to look at lot 7 and above, certainly as we get into lot 8 and 9, we start to border up into the mid-50s, getting close to 60. If we look at the squadron that's forward in Iwakuni right now, long lines of supply, then we look at about the mid-50%. But if I look at the ones back in Yuma right now, they were running 9 out of 10 jets up at a 90%. Now that's a good day. But the upper level of some of the late lot jets are running about 60%.
Just real quick, but the bottom line is where we're going to need these things are going to always be at long lines of supply. We got to be able to fix our own stuff and fix it forward and have those stockage and parts and know what they are forward, because we're not going to be close. We're going to be far when we, if and when we do a fight. Rear Admiral Conn?
Yes, sir. There are 28 F-35Cs, of which the Navy has 21 and the Marine Corps has 7. Primarily at Eglin, just standing up our FRS last year, and our first squadron is transitioning starting this month, actually, to be complete by October. In terms of the maintenance availability rates, I believe it's 50%, but I will make sure that I get the accurate answer to you and to this committee. And in terms of the actual costs, I don't have those at hand right now in terms of cost per hour, but I will also follow up with that information.
I think that's really important to know those, how often it flies, not across what the OR rate is one thing, but how often each bird, we have pacing items in the Army. Each one of these things is a pacing item to me. And I knew what all my pacing items, I knew how often by a piece of equipment, how often they were available and how often they were deadlined. And we need to do the same thing. And we also need to know what it costs to maintain, not just to buy. General Harris, please.
Congressman Kelly, sir, thank you for the question, and again, thank you for your prior service. The Air Force has 130 F-35As. 100 of those are Block 2B and older airplanes, and the availability rate of those aircraft was in the low 40s. For our 3I and our 3F aircraft, the availability rate, the ability to fly those airplanes is in the 60 to 70 range, and currently our deployed team right now is above 70 average for the several months they've been deployed, so that part's working well. Same on the costs. We think they're in about the $50,000 an hour range, but that varies by block and how you're using them, whether it's a training or it's in an operational deployment. And as we continue to grow the ecosystem of the F-35, so the F-35 that you heard Admiral Winter speak about that rolled out of the FACO in Japan, being able to build these in Turkey from a final assembly, that will help us get these parts forward that we need and provide those distribution points. So that portion is also improving.
And General Harris, I don't want to put you in the wrong service here. Compare that to another Gen 5. You have both F-22s and F-35s. Compare the cost and operational rates of those two aircraft as far as maintaining and cost to maintain.
Costs are about similar, and we expected the F-35 to be a little cheaper because the F-22 is it's a different airplane in the way we use it. It's an older LO capability, so it takes more maintenance to actually keep that upgraded on the capability. So that portion of the F-22 that we're living with, because we've been flying 5th gen for a decade now in our Air Force, they're about the same, and we expect the F-35 to be lower because obviously it's going to be a more available, a lot more on procurement side of the numbers of the aircraft.
I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Carbajal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lieutenant General Harris, in your testimony you express your continued concern over Alice. What is most disturbing is that recent investigation showed that Alice does not deliver the required warfighting capability that the Air Force needs, but this software is already being fielded. I understand you have ordered a more in-depth study on this issue. Can you provide a time frame of when this study will be completed? Furthermore, the FY17 DOT&E F-35 annual report indicated that the program relies too heavily on the results of laboratory testing of Alice software. which does not resemble operational conditions. Recommended the program develop a more adequate test venue. Vice Admiral Winter, has the program taken steps to develop a better test venue for Alice?
Mr. Congressman, thanks for the question.
I went from one to the other.
I didn't know.
Apologize.
I didn't know if there was.
Either one's fine.
I'll answer quickly. The operational environment lab that we have for our Alice, as it comes out of our Lockheed Martin RMS executive OMS environment, provides the operational reality and operational readiness for the fielded capabilities. The problem is that we are on that path to deliver the final functionality here next month with Alice 3.0. The true issues are in the underlying COTS products that are based upon a 1995 architecture that drives in just unacceptable usability and interface concerns to our warfighters. And we are on track to assess the re-architecture plan to address all of those usability issues, stabilize the software, and then work with our U.S. warfighters to ensure that Alice will be scalable and flexible for the long future. That process is in place today.
Thank you, General Harris.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the opportunity to speak about Alice. That is one of our big concerns. The team continues to provide regular updates and upgrades to Alice, so the study that you alluded to will probably be ongoing. We hope to wrap it up within the year, but as the new upgrades come, we actually add that in to make sure that we're working with the current state of what Alice is now versus what it was when we started the study. And that's helpful. As I talked to the maintainers as late as 2 nights ago, it's much better. We still have people that are permanently dedicated. Their full-time job is to work on Alice, and that wasn't what we had expected from our manpower, from our maintenance. We wanted our maintainers to be able to stay on the flight line, get the information they needed, and continue to work. And now the typical crew chief may have to actually secure her tools and her publications, walk in, do some work on Alice to figure out the way ahead, and then go back out onto the flight line. So that's not optimum at that perspective, and we continue to work through that.
General Harris, I just don't understand how we are now just realizing that the methodology we use to develop the software system may not deliver the required warfighting capability. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
The Alice software system, is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay. It's been delivered in elements and pieces. It didn't come all together. We just now added the propulsion system to it. So Alice does continue to grow, and it wasn't delivered where we need, and it's still not there yet. Things that used to take 5 and 6 hours to get the download to know if the aircraft was going to be able to fly to make the next go was substantially outside of the windows we needed. So we were able to turn that now with the improvements and working with both the contractor and the JPO to get that down to minutes. So the airplanes are able to make a normal turn time. Sir, I think we recognized that it wasn't going to deliver perfect up front, that the upgrades would be required. We just think it's taking longer and more manpower intense than we had expected.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Mr. Gates. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and my questions follow General Kelly's line of thinking. And General Harris, first, thanks to you for all of the guidance and assistance you've provided me. I will say that as my staff and I have spent time with folks at the 33rd Fighter Wing at Eglin, it has not been all smiles, because we have gotten report after report that the parts are not available to ensure that we've got capable aircraft to meet the training syllabus. And while we've not been late in graduating any pilots yet, I've been told that we are rapidly approaching the inability to accomplish the mission. And I've got JPO, and Lockheed Martin both sort of doing this, and so I'm hoping you can enlighten us as to how to get out of this system where there are not adequate parts, and particularly those who are training are frustrated when they send parts to JPO and those parts then end up in a combat squadron somewhere else. I can understand why one would do that under intense pressure. My hope is that this is actually neither Lockheed's fault nor JPO's fault. It's actually Congress's fault for keeping us under a continuing resolution for so long that we've been unable to adequately fund parts. So when we get beyond the current continuing resolution into an appropriations process, will we solve this problem before we're unable to graduate pilots on time?
So, Congressman Gates, thank you for that question. I would love to share the blame with Congress, so happy to do that, but it's partially us sitting here. We were late in standing up our depots to actually turn and fix those parts, so we've been going back to the OEMs, the original equipment manufacturers, to get new parts for most of the time rather than fix them, so those parts themselves are stacking up. And you heard the Admiral talk that we're getting there to stand those depots up and fixing those parts faster. And as you know, Eglin's special in all of our hearts. It's my birthplace, by the way. They've got our oldest jets. That's the first place we put them. So a lot of those parts that they go, we're not even putting now into production airplanes, but they need those parts to keep them flying at the 2B level, which are the jets that are the way they're configured. So that's a concern of what we're looking at from an Air Force, to make sure that our training pilots are getting the information and the quality of training they need before they go to those operational squadrons. And we are working through our plan to how do we either upgrade or swap those aircraft out and put them into a suitable role.
And it invariably begs the question, if we've got folks training on the older aircraft, does that in any way impair the quality of the training, particularly if you're unable to get those aircraft in the sky? I've also heard troubling reports that Lockheed may be involved in changing the status of planes in their reports, going from non-mission capable to potentially partially mission capable. To what extent is the contractor involved in that decision-making process versus our uniformed military?
Normally, sir, they're not. And when it comes to an operational squadron, even less so. Because these are training jets, in your particular case, it has happened where we say it's not flyable because the LO or a combat system may not be ready, yet the company looks at it and says the airplane's actually flyable, so they change the status of that. We disagree with that practice. We're working through to make sure that it's back.
Is that a current practice? Do we currently have a situation where uniformed military says that the aircraft is not mission capable, the contractor says it is, and then the contractor's view is dispositive?
I think we have made a change to say that will no longer occur. It has occurred in the past. I don't think it's occurring right now.
It'd be excellent if you could confirm that and maybe let the committee know so that we could take comfort in the manifestation of that change. Is there anything we can do, and any guidance you would give us during the appropriations process so that we could work with our appropriators and authorize the right amounts, so that on a going forward basis we don't risk sort of going over the edge of the waterfall on not graduating pilots and then seeing an even more pronounced impact on combat squadrons than the missing of a part, because you'd have the missing of a pilot, which is the most important part?
Yes, sir, that's a fair question. We are doing less than half of our upgrade training now at Eglin, as we've got a little more than one squadron and more jets standing up at Luke. So we're balancing that with making sure that we have, as the operation squadrons build, the training squadrons build. So I think we have that solved at this time to make sure that the build is commensurate with what we need. As I said, the aircraft you're flying at Eglin are our oldest ones. They're our least available, but we're also able to measure and put fewer pilots per squadron into that until we can get those airplanes upgraded, as we talked about, to a 3I or 3F configuration, if that's the way we're able to go.
So what I hear you saying is that it's truly not the contractor's fault. There is a bureaucratic issue at JPO that we're working through to fix, and that with the new appropriation, with our new cap deal, that this is a solvable problem, that we won't be here, 12 months from now wondering why we're approaching the time where we can't graduate pilots.
Sir, the problem is solvable. I'm not sure it's a bureaucratic JPO issue. It was probably more of a misunderstanding for the company doing contract maintenance to think they had the ability to go in and make changes from what an airman or a supervisor put out.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Mr. Bacon.
Hello, thank you, gentlemen, for being here. It's a very important topic. It's going to make a big impact on our country for decades to come. I have a couple questions for Admiral Winter, and then one for General Harris. When I retired out of the Air Force, I was working in the mission data files, and it was a hard problem. Of course, that was in 2014, so we've hopefully progressed 3 years and made a lot of progress. I understand that the U.S. Reprogramming Lab has the lead, and they're making some great strides. One of the concerning things is those mission data files that sort of run the whole, it's like the brains of the F-35. The earlier mission data files are not compatible with what we're using in the F-35. Have we created a standard that we're going to be using for the future F-35s and future, 5th generation and 6th generation aircraft? Hopefully we don't have to recreate the wheel again like we've done here.
Mr. Congressman, thanks for that question, because the mission data file is that intelligence brain that when in the aircraft and the aircraft's operating, and the advanced sensors start to sense and bring that information in, the mission data file presents and provides that cross-check, presents that information to the pilot on the panoramic cockpit display. My first introduction to the mission data file is it is a series of hundreds, in some case thousands of files. It's not a single file. The tool suite that the 513th as well as our government software engineers use are an engineering developmental tool suite that was used in the early 2000s. That's another causal factor. And we were doing unique mission data file architectures for each type of aircraft configuration. We have learned all of those lessons, and so today we have put a standard framework for the mission data file. However, we still need to generate a new data file when a configuration changes. And those configurations are like going from 3I to 3F, adding additional sensors. We have to get over that as well. And so we've brought in the Defense Digital Science team. We've brought in the Air Force Digital Science folks to provide us insights on better ways to re-architect the mission data file format going into the future. Okay. Thanks, sir.
Thank you very much. Now, I'm a RC-135 guy from, going way back, 3 tours at Offutt, four times in the 55th Wing. So the F-35 has a great sensor package on there. In fact, I remember always using the words exquisite sensor package. What concerns me, though, is I think we're still trying to figure out how do we get that data off the airplane. So 2 things. When we land, we should be able to have that storage capability so we can go back and debrief and figure out where all the threats are at so that the follow-on packages can get that data and be better prepared or to get the mission done. But even more optimally is a real-time intelligence feed off the airplane. Where are we at with both? When we land to get the data off, or also follow on getting that data off real-time while we're airborne?
Again, sir, excellent question. After landing and bringing out the PMD, which is the data cartridge, we had initially an older generation of data recorder transfer that was just completely unacceptable. It was 1 to 15, 1 to 20. We are now on the 3rd generation and have designed the 4th generation that's now near real time. And so that's good, but even in downloading that, our debrief mission planning systems are not up to snuff, and so we need to work on that, along with that integration to Alice, so that all of that data can then provide the health and status and prognostic look ahead for that individual aircraft. As far as real-time airborne engagement and data collection, sensor collection, and then being able to process that, right now we can share that amongst other F-35s that are on the same configuration. So that real-time communication and sharing does occur. And from other Link 16 communication data links, we can share it with other 4th generation, certain data with certain 4th generation aircraft.
So we can get it back to the AOC, is what you're saying eventually?
Eventually, yes, sir. So the thing is, it's not at the level of flexibility that we need to get to, that we are planning to have it to as we get into the Block 4 capabilities, which are part of those modernization and enhancements to the system.
I won't be able to get my question there. I'm running out of time. But I just think that offers a real decisive advantage, getting this data off real time, back to the AOC, seeing where the SA-20s are at or where the airborne threats are at, and be able to respond and plan while those F-35s are still airborne. I just see a huge advantage there. And so hopefully we can exploit that. And with that, I yield back.
Chairman Bishop.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your communication with my staff as well. Gentlemen, I appreciate all of you being here today, and Admiral Winter, I also appreciate you in your recent tour of Hill Air Force Base with the Air Force basing team. Obviously, I think I'm justifiably proud of that base and what the 388th is doing, what they've done over in Europe, and what the 34th Squadron is doing in the Pacific right now, as well as the depot work that is taking place there to maintain that aircraft. As you go forward with with HPSI, issue, for whatever that acronym means. I can't keep up with them anyway. I was just wondering, as you come up with your assessment criteria, will like real-time co-location of operational and maintenance expertise be one of the factors that will be considered?
Congressman Bishop, thank you for that question. And also, I was very impressed with my first visit to Hill, and not only from the operational perspective and the depot, but the software sustainment footprint that's there. On your question about the hybrid product support integrator.
You got it.
There
Good
you go, sir. HPSI. If we can't pronounce your acronym, it's not a good acronym. The current HPSI team is located here in Crystal City and operating and doing the work of the HPSI. We are using the United States Air Force strategic basing process through the Secretary of the Air Force. The criterion that was laid out was to maximize and leverage off of intellectual capital of government acquisition professionals and operational professionals in a geolocated area. Will there be additional credit or discriminators between having sustainment and acquisition and operational? They are both two separate on the criterion list, as well as other areas in the criterion. I know that Hill is one of our candidates, and that process for final selection is working its way to, in the April timeframe, to Secretary Wilson.
I appreciate that. If I could just follow up with one other too, you know, there was a recent GAO report that talked about repair time, and I was wondering if you have implemented any new initiatives, or what can Congress do to assist in making sure that those repairs are being done in a timely fashion to keep us at least on pace with the Chinese and the Russian fifth-generation aircrafts?
Again, Congressman Bishop, great question. And this committee has already leaned forward in supporting spare parts, as well as ensuring the funding for our organic depot stand-up, which is our #1 effort in standing up from 23 repair lines to 68 repair lines to more rapidly, increase the repair capacity, but rapidly deliver the repaired part back to our warfighter. And that's underway right now, and the ramp up of that is being funded. That's our first and foremost effort. So that action is underway right now. We're also engaging with the industry partners that have that repair capacity to ensure that their throughput goes so that our warfighters have repaired spare parts on the flight line.
Oh, thank you. Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back.
Mr. Whitman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us today. Lieutenant General Rudder, I want to begin with you and ask you, as the Marine Corps deals with having two versions of F-35, both F-35 Bravo and F-35C, is the mix of aircraft for the Marine Corps optimal in order for you to achieve the goals in the National Defense Strategy?
Thank you, Congressman. It is. Currently, with the F-35B, those aircraft will serve in two roles. They will be deployable on the amphibious big decks, but we'll also use them for our shore-based commitments right now. If you look at where we are today, we've got an F-18 squadron shore-based in CENTCOM, we've got F-18 squadron shore-based in PACOM, we've got a carrier deployment, and then we've got all our MU deployments that are roaming about. This aircraft will do all of those, to include the F-35Cs, which will integrate in with the carrier deployments. So currently, those aircraft, as we look to distribute them around the world and fulfill our distributed operations, our expeditionary air base operations concepts on being able to use smaller airfields in a distributed stowable manner, I think it fits perfectly in the lethality part of the National Defense Strategy.
Very good. I want to ask you a little bit about software upgrades. We know that the Marine Corps declared for F-35B IOC with Block 2B, and the Air Force declared IOC for F-35C with Block 3I. We know the difference between them is the integrated core processor, so there's some hardware differences there. As we look at where Block 3I is today, we know that 85% of the code necessary for full combat capability today is flying. We know that Block 3F is soon going to be before us. We know it's going to be soon, but we know that it's not going to be operationalized on a number of aircraft for a significant period of time. Give me your perspective on the importance of the software element of the hardware of these aircraft, not only what it brings in capability, but what about the timeliness of having that for your aircraft and the missions that you are needing to perform as part of the Marine Corps' direction?
We have, we're going to prioritize, obviously, our forward deployers to get the 3F drops. And we will also prioritize those that are in the continental United States that are next deployed for those 3I drops. We're still receiving. As a matter of fact, we just received our first Lot 10, which is a production 3F aircraft just the other day. Now it's at Pax River doing some testing. So it is very important. One, this 3F drop, first and foremost, will give us better reliability. It's a more stable software, less fault codes. Two, it gives us the full G and full airspeed right off the bat. And also for the Marine Corps, what it does is it allows us, and for all the service, it allows us to do external stores and our gun pod. So at some point within whatever scenario you may want to dictate, we will be able to strip down, mostly under the great command of the great Air Force, to be able to integrate a part of that, to strip down any air defense systems, and then we're going to put the F-35B into a bottom trek formation and do close air support with us or aerial interdiction. So that's the goodness of it, and there's some other things that go along with that as far as some tactical pieces of that, as far as being able to push data links a little better and quicker. For upgrading our other aircraft, we are funding and advocating and working with the JPO to make sure that our TR-1 jets are upgraded to TR-2. And we hope to have our fleet jets that are out there upgraded by next summer. So we should hopefully by next summer have all 3F configured out in the fleet, and then we'll begin to work on our training squadron.
Gotcha. Very good. General Harris, give me your perspective, too, as we talked about the Air Force went to IOC with the 3I, with Block 3I, 3F becoming available. Give me your perspective on the importance of 3F, the importance of the capability that the aircraft has with that software upgrade, and where you see it being needed by the Air Force to achieve their missions.
Thank you, Congressman Whitman. The benefit is the Air Force is now flying with 3F in our operational squadron. We did the upgrade for the aircraft currently deployed. They left as 3I and are now 3F at deployed location, and we're working through the rest of them at Hill. It's not night and day. It is an awesome improvement in many ways to provide aircraft stability. The fault rates are down, and the software itself is making better use of the sensors that are on board the airplane, because, you know, it is just a software upgrade, but it's all working better now. So 3F is the airplane, the air crew and the maintainers are really we're looking for.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll yield back.
Thank you. We're going to go for a couple additional questions. Admiral Winter, I work with our NATO partners, and dual-capable aircraft are incredibly important for our ability to continue the NATO nuclear mission. Your budget requests currently include $770.4 million for the development of dual-capable aircraft and $984 million for Block 4 C2D2. In your prepared remarks, you mentioned that the program will leverage a minimum essential infrastructure for the development, integration, certification, and testing of the DCA capability. Would reductions to the $984 million request for Block 4 affect the infrastructure necessary for developing dual-capable aircraft capabilities?
Mr. Chairman, your direction in the NDA, previous NDA that gave us programmatic direction to ensure that the DCA development and delivery was not impeded by or tied to the Block 4 software development, and so we're following that direction. And the infrastructure and specifics are the developmental test flight aircraft and the laboratories that we need to bring the F-35 software in, along with the munition software to do that integration. The $984 million request in FY19 funds predominantly the Block 4 software for the F-35, the TR-3 continued development and integration efforts, and then the right sizing of our developmental test aircraft and test fleet. If there is a mark to that 984, there's a graduating impact to that element, but the DCA and the $77 million that we have budgeted for DCA will continue to do the the design work post-PDR to CDR for DCA, and the infrastructure will be there to allow us to do that.
Thank you, Songus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Admiral Winter, in a recent Inside the Navy story, you were reported to have said that the Block 3F deficiency database contains roughly 200 deficiencies related to mission planning, Alice, and the aircraft. You also reportedly said that you would not, quote, pay twice, unquote, for fixing these issues during the follow-on C2D2 upgrade effort. So first of all, can you provide more details about those 200 deficiencies?
Yes, ma'am, and those deficiencies capture the entire or the time frame from 2001 to now. Most of them have been resolved, but those are remaining deficiencies against the fielded capability, and in that, the performance level of that capability. It's not the capability's not there, but the performance of that capability. We have little pippers in the display. They may be slightly jittery, or a refresh rate of a display, which we will go fix, but to go fix that would delay delivery of the capability. We take those types of decisions to what we call a configuration steering board, and they are chaired by me, and they are populated by the U.S. Marine Corps, U.S. Navy, and the U.S. Air Force warfighter, and they give me direction to say, you have to fix that right now, or that can be fixed later. And so those are things in the simulator, in Alice, in the MDF, and in the aircraft. Those 200 DRs, deficiency reports, that are remaining right now have gone through that process, and they are still being tracked, and they will be resolved as we go forward. But our industry partner was on contract to deliver Block 3F capability with no deficiencies. So what we are doing is we're holding what we call a consideration summit, where we bring not just those DRs, ma'am, but there are other contractual non-deliverable items that our industry partners have not provided. And so we will sit down and we will have a discussion on the like-kind feedback and like-kind resourcing. Because as I go forward with Block 4 and I'm doing the modification and enhancement, I'm going to be fixing some of those display. It's just the right thing to do. But I don't want to pay that because it should have been fixed before we delivered. So that's the idea of how we will get that consideration adjudication and not pay twice.
So when you could say consideration summit, you're talking about who pays for it? The
Correct.
money.
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
great, thank you, I yield back.
Gentlemen, any closing remarks, anything you'd like to add that we've not gotten to? I think you've had a pretty good breadth of the committee's concerns. Any other questions?
Just an overall thanks for what you've done with the budget last year and certainly the budget this year. I mean, that back to the original point was we are now able to fully fund these readiness accounts that get this airplane where it needs to be, plus ramp up production. So thank you for the committee and to the...
I appreciate that. Hopefully in the next several years we won't have the battle over top line that we've had over the past, and we can talk about how we reach new capabilities as opposed to just the degrading of our readiness. So I appreciate that comment. With that, we'll be adjourned.